Welcome to Eternal Elements Learning Podcast, brought to you by Chess Online. These podcasts are a part of the audio certificate programs on Chess Online. You're free to take these podcasts on your desired portal also, should you only wish to learn on the go. Thank you so much for engaging on these podcasts, and you can connect with the author on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Hi, welcome back. This is Niket Karajagi from Chess Online, talking to you on Eternal Elements. We are discussing a whole lot of things that leaders and managers do. We're going to talk the most important facet of leadership, which is about giving feedback and doing feedforward. While you do set in ownership and accountability in the team, and while you're doing everything right, and while the team is on course, they do expect a feedback, whether they're on course or they're not on course. They expect the feedback, whether they're doing things right, they're not doing things right. But a lot of times, leaders, based on different cultures, find it very difficult to actually provide a feedback to the team because they think that the relationship will get burnt out should they give a feedback. They think that feedback is all about criticism. A lot of times even teams are not willing to take the feedback because they are not trained to take the feedback effectively. But can you imagine a world without feedback? If you just don't know what you're doing, can you imagine what's going to be happening? Life is going to be very boring. You just don't know whether you're doing things right. And therefore, it becomes the responsibility of every leader and manager to provide a feedback or a feed forward to the team. What is the feedback all about? After the event has been occurred or the event is done or the person has actually enabled all the effort and delivered an output, it's all about providing kind of an assessment about what went right and what went wrong. However, when you attack the identity of a person, that's when the feedback becomes a critique. Never ever attack the identity of a person. You give a feedback on the behavior. You give a feedback on the situation. You give a feedback on the outcome. You do not give a feedback to the person. You don't tell a person, look, you failed. You tell the person why the failure occurred. What is feed forward? Feed forward is much more enabling in nature, where before the event starts, that's when you actually provide inputs in terms of the strengths or the weaknesses that the person needs to be careful about. And that is much more effective because the event hasn't yet occurred, and therefore the person is well equipped and well prepared to deal with the issue. That's what leaders do. They combine feedback and feed forward. Only doing feed forward makes no sense. Only doing feedback doesn't make sense. And therefore, you tend to put the two together. What you tend to do is, you tend to do a sandwich technique because the work is a work in progress constantly. Tasks are all work in progress, and therefore you can combine the feedback and feed forward together. You can talk about a sandwich method where at first, you can tell the person what is it that the person needs to start doing, what are the new behaviors that the person can put in, what are the skill sets, what are the strengths, what are the competencies that the person could do. What is it that the person needs to stop doing? Something which is detrimental the person could stop doing. And the last bit, what is it that the person is doing great and can continue doing? So the start, stop, continue is a fantastic process to actually conduct a feedback and a feed forward together. But what happens when you give a feedback? What happens when the feedback is not right? What happens when the feedback is interpreted as critique? Well, the person goes through the cycle, which is called a grief cycle. And in the grief cycle, what happens is the equilibrium of the person shifts. And the moment the equilibrium of the person shifts when the feedback is given, the first thing is a state of shock. The person just gets immobilized. After that, the person negates the feedback. The person doesn't agree to the feedback, and it is natural. After that, the person gets angry. He thinks that the entire outcome that the person has delivered somehow is not reaching the leader or the manager. And then after a while, the next stage of the grief cycle comes in, where the person starts negotiating, and then when the negotiation doesn't succeed, when the feedback still holds, that's when the person hits a low, can move into depression. But that's okay, because now the self-reflection has started, and after that the person becomes aware and the person changes. So the Kubler-Ross cycle or the grief cycle is a part and parcel of the feedback process. The first is the equilibrium gets upset, and therefore the person experiences a shock, the person stalls. After that, the person starts negating the feedback, and after that the person becomes angry, and after that the person starts negotiating, and after that the person hits a low, tends to show signs of depression, and after that the awareness comes in, and then comes the change. This is a cycle that every individual goes through. So don't worry. If the team hits a low after taking a feedback, they will bounce back. Don't worry at all. And that's what feedback and feedforward is all about. When you build in ownership and accountability in the team, feedback and feedforward are essential components of building ownership and accountability in the team. This was all about feedback and feedforward. This is Niket Karajagi from Eternal Elements, signing off. And I'm going to meet you in the next podcast, which is brought to you by Tyasa Online. Feel free to go through any of the earlier podcasts, and you could also take up online courses of mine where we are talking about different leadership prospects and different 21st century behaviors that are required. I'll see you in the next podcast.